everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by the NeoSTEM ecosystem. If this is your first session with us, you may not know about the NeoSTEM ecosystem. I'm not going to spend a lot of time filling you in because I think a lot of you do, but I'll tell you that today's webinar is a prime example of the types of things that the NeoSTEM ecosystem does. As a part of a network of 89 regional ecosystems around the world, NeoSTEM sees challenges and opportunities and tries to bring together partners to create meaningful STEM learning opportunities for all. You can learn more about the ecosystem at www.neostem.org, and we'll put that in the chat, or by reaching out to Alyssa Briggs, who's on with us today as well, and who's serving as the interim director of NeoSTEM, in addition to her duties leading the STEM learning ecosystems community of practice internationally. Alyssa's on today's webinar. She'll share her contact information in the chat for you. We have a lot of people asking what they can do to help support the students of Cleveland, the families of Cleveland, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to learn about various initiatives to support students, teachers, and families in Cleveland, initiatives like Learning Pods, which I'm excited to learn more about. We'll also have an opportunity to hear from members of the Digital Equity Coalition. We're going to talk about what's being done right now to support the disconnected. Frankly, a critical shortcoming of our really great city, and one that I know a lot of you are eager to help change as well. You're going to have an opportunity to ask your questions of our panelists. So please make sure that if you have questions, we don't have that Q&A button today because we're not in webinar mode, but if you could put your questions in the chat, and Alyssa and Angie, who's on the call as well, and I will be scanning the chat for those questions. And we're going to get to as many of those as we can. The earlier you get those in, the greater the chances of it being answered today. We encourage you to sidebar in the chat as well and have your own conversations about the things the panel is discussing. So please go ahead, if you haven't already, let us know your name and organization. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it, along with a written summary, will be shared with you via email and posted online at www.neostem.org. So now, without further ado, our panelists. Dale Robinson Anglin joined the Cleveland Foundation in May 2017 as a consultant and was hired in October 2017 as Program Director for Youth and Social Services. For the past 11 years, she was Associate Director of Programs at the Victoria Foundation in Newark, New Jersey, where she was responsible for successful programming in higher education, STEM, STEAM, K-12 education, summer youth employment, and leadership efforts. Dale served as the the Director of Resource Development for New Community Corporation in Newark, as the Executive Director of the Association for Public Policy Analysis and Management, and was a social analyst for the Congressional Research Service, both in Washington, D.C. Dale, welcome. So I've got to know, you are relatively new to living here in Cleveland. You see all the things that we're trying to tackle to make the city better. What gives you hope in our city in these unprecedented times? Anything?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was actually told before I came to Cleveland, someone said, Cleveland owns its city, that the people are very generous. They love their area, their region, and I have seen that first through the sports, of course, and now, to be frank, in COVID, both in leading the COVID fund and in working on these academic learning pods, the number and generosity of donors, of organizations willing to come together, this is unprecedented. And I have been heartened by the people willing to say, all right, what do you need? Is it money? Is it knowledge? Because we did something that you can learn from. I've seen collaborations in the last 6 months that I'm not sure existed quite as much before. I'm hoping we continue those past the pandemic, but that gives me hope. People being flexible and creative in the moment to help their fellow resident.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've seen the same thing. And we've talked about this a lot, that this is one of those times in all of our lifetimes where if we don't grab this opportunity, we're really letting ourselves, frankly, down, because it's rare that so many people are really guided towards working together. By the same token, and this leads me really nicely into our next panelist, it seems like this is the first time that I've heard people outside of education and technology broadly talking about the connectivity issues in this area. And that's, I know, a passion of our next panelist, Dorothy Bonnick. Dorothy is the Chief Executive of Digital C. Dorothy's been involved since the early days of Digital C, which, if you don't know, is formerly One Community and One Cleveland, and has served several years on its board. Dorothy is a seasoned community and business leader with broad experience in organization and community development, strategic leadership, entrepreneurship, technology commercialization, business, and early stage capital formation. She was also the founding president of Nortech. Dorothy has a 30-year track record of successfully creating, transforming, and leading organizations that today are part of Greater Cleveland and the state of Ohio's nationally recognized technology and innovation ecosystem. Dorothy, you've been working to improve things in this area for a long time. What are you most proud of the work you've been able to touch?
Oh, wow. I've looked at a lot. I started way back in the day when entrepreneurship, we were 50 out of 50 communities in entrepreneurship. We had dreams of a biomedical industry. And, for a long time, I was the only one working on that with the Edison Biotechnology Center and helped to create what's now BioOhio and BioEnterprise. I did a lot of coaching of technology-based businesses. But what I'm most passionate about and most excited about is what we're doing right now to try to address the digital divide. So this is no longer a career move for me. This is a passion. I flunked retirement to do this. Lev Gonick, who was really the visionary and founder of all things broadband in Greater Cleveland, came to Cleveland in the early 2000s and really had the vision for both one Cleveland and one community. We built out this fabulous middle mile. And then when Lev decided in 2017 to go to Arizona State University to become the CIO, where he had 600 people to implement his ideas instead of the 16 that he left behind at Digital C. And I jumped off the board and onto the ground. And I've done that a couple of times with organizations. You learn something very different. And the difference I saw was, how could we have worked for almost 18 years and have created a middle mile and connected so many nonprofit institutions, but never have reached the neighborhoods? How could we be in the top 5 least connected cities in the country? That was just inexcusable. And so, I'm most passionate about that. And for years, I worked in the technology and innovation environment, and we always thought about diversity and inclusion, but, it was more difficult to do. STEM education is a huge part of what needs to happen, right? And what you've done with the NeoSTEM ecosystem and getting kids interested in science, technology, engineering, medical, mathematics. My original backgrounds, I've got a master's degree in biology, and I was a medical researcher for years, and I thought I couldn't cure cancer, so I better move on to something else. So I think what I'm most, if we can solve this digital divide in Cleveland, it will be the highlight of a long career, and I'll be able to retire with a big smile on my face.
I think that would be absolutely a really amazing feather in your cap. And finally, we have Kurt Williams, who I think actually just logged on. We knew he was going to be a tiny bit late because he had a previous commitment. But Kurt is responsible for the implementation of the Digital Excellence Initiative at the Cleveland Foundation, as well as supporting the Chief Digital Innovation and Chief Information Officer and strategizing future grant making. The Digital Excellence Strategy is multi-pronged, encompassing digital equity, civic technology, government innovation, and more, and geared toward building a stronger, more equitable digital community. Kurt, this is a hard question to answer quickly, but I know that one of the things we get constantly asked is, we get a lot of, we see all these big issues. How can we really dig in and help at a deep level? But we also get a lot of people saying, listen, I believe in this, but I'm super busy. What is something that people can do that's quick that will help you and the initiative get this work done? What do people need to do to support that work?
Absolutely, and thanks for being patient as I logged on late. Obviously, everybody's insanely busy recently. There are a lot of things. The main thing that we're all looking for right now is computer donations, the immediate right now. If somebody has an old computer, has an old laptop just sitting around, Cuyahoga County Public Library has been doing a computer drive. WKYC has throwing that up on their airwaves, and giving computers to PCs for people to refurbish and then put them out in the community. There's been a lot of problems with the supply chain. I'm not sure if everybody saw the story from last week that CMSD computers were getting held up. So one of the biggest things and the biggest needs is computers right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Kurt. And I know Becky Rinaldo's on with us today. If she has other information, she can put that in the chat. And listen, everyone on here, there's 30 of you on here. There is zero chance that 75% of you don't have an old computer in either your office or your basement. Zero chance. So don't be stingy. Walk down there, figure out what you have, take it to the Cuyahoga County Library, public library system, and get that donated. These kids need our help. So thank you, Kurt. Welcome, Dale, Dorothy, and Kurt. Again, we'll be taking your questions in a little while. So as you hear our panelists discuss their work, make sure you're getting those questions in the chat and getting those in there as early as possible so that we can get to as many as possible. Dale, I know you're going to update us about the learning pods and let us know what's still needed to make those successful. I'm really excited to hear about it. Dale?
Thank you so much. We all know that this pandemic is hurting everybody. And I would say it's particularly hurting students. With having to close schools in the fall, in the spring, now opening virtually or hybrid in a lot of places, and that digital divide has been incredibly hard to manage. We're grateful, by the way, to Digital C and Kurt for helping lead the digital work. The idea of the academic learning pods, pandemic learning pods, they're called different things, really sprouted up over the last few months, but they sprouted up actually initially with parents who could pay, who could create their own learning pods, 6 kids, they pay a nanny or they pay a tutor. And it became very evident when that started to sprout up especially on the coast. Well, what do you do in districts where the families cannot pay? And we have children of all ages who virtual learning is not the best. It would be better if they were technically in a physical location, even if they're online, but someone helping, making sure that they understand the lesson, that they do the lesson. We all have stories. I have my own 2 college-age kids who are home online right now, who aren't always doing exactly what they need to do. That's even worse for smaller kids. And so we already have a very robust out-of-school time sector here in Greater Cleveland. MyCom, NeoSTEM, the libraries, the rec centers, Say Yes to Education. We already had been meeting for a number of things, particularly with the launch of Say Yes, to be honest. And we thought over the summer, what could we do to help CMSD as they opened in the fall? And the idea sprouted up. Let's see if we can create academic learning pods for our neediest students without them having to pay for that service. And so that's what we're doing. There are about 10 different groups, NeoSTEM being one of them, planning these learning pods, working directly with CMSD. We know some of the charters are doing their own with other partners. We've put together an RFP. It's on the MyCom website, the NeoSTEM website. United Way of Greater Cleveland is managing this process for us. It's on their website. And anybody can go there. The request for proposals is due Thursday at 5 o'clock. We had TA sessions last week. Those are recorded, and you can go and get information from those TA sessions. But we've got a number of people, and the bottom line is these will be physical locations, safely structured. We have to follow Ohio public health and national public health guidelines. So students have to wear masks. It's a 9-to-1 ratio. We have to have background checks for the adults that are in the room. We have to have cleaning, that's done on a regular basis during the course of the day. The day is structured from 8 to 4, just like a normal school day. Students will come, they'll register with different independent organizations, and they will be supervised while they are doing their CMSD academic learning. Sometimes those students won't be in learning session. There may be a break. And during that time, enrichment activities are allowed and even encouraged from these providers. So we're raising money to support these pods for at least 1,000 to 2,000 students. We're hoping to get them started by September 14th, even though school starts for most kids on the 8th. And we're working with a lot of providers. It looks like a lot of people took advantage of our TA sessions last week. Churches are willing to open up their spaces. Even if they don't have staff, we're matching organizations that have staff with organizations that have space. But it is physical, it's in-person learning, supervised learning for kids in the K-8 space. We're not doing high school. For as much as we can do for our neediest students, young students, homeless students, students of essential workers, students who did not have any access to connectivity. We were doing that, working together to do that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You know, I'm sure you're all reading this too, but all I keep reading is that the massive equitable divide that we have in this country already has just greatly grown over the past 6 months, 5 months. And it's heartbreaking that some of these students who need us and need our help are getting even less of it than they used to, which wasn't enough in the first place. Um, Sorry. Whoops, I just lost my thing. Apologize. Dale, Emily Fine from the Girl Scouts is asking whether there's a link or a flyer, something along those lines that she could pass along to her network. I'm sure others on the call as well would be
So if you
interested.
go on the United Way Greater Cleveland website, I believe the RFP is listed there. It's definitely up on the MyCom website. And I'm not sure if it's on the NeoSTEM website.
Perfect. I tell you what, why don't, while
Find the link.
Dorothy and Kurt are talking here in a second, I'll dig up that link and I'll put it in the chat. So if you're with us right now and you're looking at the chat, you'll be able to find that link in there in just a second.
I mean, let me just clarify that it is for 9 weeks, because right now CMSD is opening up virtually for the first 9 weeks. We will, we'll reconsider as CMSD changes its plan. If it opens up hybrid after that, we'll try to work with them in a hybrid situation. If it's still virtual, we'll try to continue the pods if they go well. So we're lockstep with CMSD on this one, trying to support them as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Again, before we move on to Dorothy and Kurt, make sure you're putting your questions in the chat. I know that a lot of you have questions about what you can do to help, the different things that your organizations can provide and things of that nature. So make sure you're putting those in the chat so that we can see them and try to get to as many of those as possible. Thank you, Dale. Before we go to those questions that I just asked for, we're going to hear from our two other panelists, Dorothy and Kurt, who are going to discuss the massive connectivity issue we have and let us know about the initiatives currently in play to address those. I think Kurt is kicking us off. Is that right, Kurt?
Yeah, I am. And I have a presentation. Will I be able to share my screen?
You should be all shareable. Share ready.
Great. Let's make that full screen.
There it is. We've got you.
All right. So here we go. I thought I would start with giving a little bit of background about the issue, the varying levels of people's familiarity with this, but just broad overview of Cuyahoga County's digital divide. Right now, according to the latest American Community Survey estimates, about 22.5% of households in Cuyahoga County don't have internet access of any kind. That's including smartphone access, so about 121,000 people. This is really an affordability issue in Cuyahoga County. Nearly half of households who are low income do not have connectivity right now. For the most part, the infrastructure is there. Some of the infrastructure is not as good as we would hope. There is it goes very deep. Nothing that I should get into right now. But this really is an affordability issue. And then more than 34% of seniors over the age of 65 also do not have a home computer nor internet access of any kind in Cuyahoga County. I'm a big visual person, I'm a big map person, so I always like to show a map. This shows the percent of households with fixed broadband in Cuyahoga County. As you can see, there are pockets especially in Cleveland and East Cleveland and some of the inner ring suburbs that do not adopt broadband at the same level as many in the outer ring do. And why is broadband important? I think it goes without saying, really. Right now, especially as we've gone through the pandemic, everybody realizes the need as we're sheltering in place. Why broadband is important. But if you're unsure, then here are the many reasons, and there are so many others, why it's so important to have broadband. It transcends any one focus area. It goes in education and workforce development and finance and health, and even accessing government services and benefits, and just staying engaged in the social scene. And so what one thing that we've done to try to address this, the Cleveland Foundation has been focusing on the digital divide for several years now. But when the pandemic sprung up, we realized that our efforts just were not where they needed to be. So one thing we did was convene the Digital Equity Coalition with over 70 organizations participating. That there are many more now since this was written, probably nearly 100 now. And this coalition is basically to just bring everybody together to make sure everybody's on the same page. We're coordinating efforts, we're communicating, and we have one voice as we go to advocate for state and federal dollars, because a lot of the time this issue can't be solved without state and federal leadership. The coalition is guiding the Greater Cleveland Digital Equity Fund priorities, which the Digital Equity Fund we started a few months ago at the Cleveland Foundation, which will be used to get resources out in the community as quickly as possible. And the coalition will guide these. And with the coalition, we'll have an immediate term focus and a long-term focus, which I'll get into as well. I do want to point out that we have subcommittees for the coalition. This is where the real work gets done. This is where solutions are determined. We really understand what needs are. There are advocates, grassroots, community-based organizations, and so those subcommittees are students, what we call strivers, and we stole that from Dorothy in Digital C. So thank you, Dorothy. Which is our workforce development, or is it our workforce working age, un and underemployed people, seniors, advocacy, and neighborhoods. And so our short-term focus, our intermediate-term focus, we want to make sure it's fast to get devices, to get connectivity in the hands of people as fast as possible, especially students as school's starting and so many schools are going to remote learning. We knew we needed to work fast. So our main priority throughout the summer was for students. And we knew it needed to be scaled, because it had to go across Greater Cleveland. If it didn't, it wouldn't be equitable. And we knew it had to be specific. There are some households that had a computer already, but they didn't have internet access. There were some that were opposite. And there were some that did have that, but they have 6 kids. And if they're all gonna work remotely and try to get their education remotely, then they had to have 6 computers, because you can't have 6 kids sharing a computer. And then for a long-term focus, this is still being fleshed out, still being worked on. Dorothy will definitely have more to say on it, but we know it needs to be affordable, sustainable, and equitable. There's nothing else. I don't know if I need to go into all of these little bullet points, because it's really just an extension of our short term, and just making sure we have a sustainable plan moving forward. And so I do want to drill down into our immediate term student execution plan. A lot of it is being done right now or has been done. It's really getting hotspots and broadband contracts and getting these into students and families' hands as fast as possible, and refurbished devices as well. We're working through PCs for People. CMSD is going one-to-one, I know, with all of their families, with all of their students. For the other inner ring suburbs, the other school districts that have students who still have need, working with PCs for People to get a computer directly to those families to own. They're working with the schools to ensure that no student is left out. And this is for the immediate term to enable this remote learning in the fall. So we talked about a call to action before. Just wanted to make sure this is blown up, to get the word out. It is hard to reach a lot of students if they don't have internet access, because the main way to reach people is through the internet nowadays. We're hoping that the schools are able to reach out to all of these students, but if they're not, we would love for you to reach out to any families you serve, anybody you know who doesn't have access, to go to PCs for People. They have a website where students families can register for the devices and for hotspot connectivity for this immediate term, which I will share. I think it's on the next slide, actually. Yeah, there it is. And that's really for charter and public school families because of the deal we had to make with the provider, but we're also focusing on private schools as well if they have need. CMSD families are doing their separate one-to-one. So if you're serving a family who's in CMSD, they can contact their local principal. The donations to the Digital Equity Fund, you can reach out to Beju Shah or Leon Wilson. And then I saw that Becky also put in the chat that the donation drive at Cuyahoga County Public Library is over, but PCs for People will gladly still take any computer donations you have. So if you do have computers, or if you know of people who do, that you can still reach out to them. That is my presentation. And I know Dorothy will dive more into that long term and what Digital C is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. We appreciate that. And we have some questions are coming in that we'll get to in a second for you, Dorothy. But yeah, what does that look like from the Digital C perspective? How are you guys addressing those needs?
So Kurt showed the map, and that map is key because you saw where the least connected people are, and the percentages may not mean anything or much to people, but that no access to internet in the city of Cleveland is somewhere between 42 and 50,000 households, not people, households that have no internet subscription of any type. And he gave you the stats for all of Cuyahoga County, which is, that's important because as you can see, the inner ring suburbs have some issues as well. And then it is an affordability issue. We've, in 2017, we recognized this. Lev Gonick actually recognized it, and he put together what I call the fiber ring in the sky. And this is the solution that Digital C has to this, the longer term permanent solution. So the best solution would be we could dig fiber to everybody's home, just like they can in the suburbs. A suburb like Fairlawn or Dublin, Ohio, has enough dollars they can do a municipal network and dig fiber to everybody's home and deliver gig speeds. Cleveland's infrastructure is not going to be able to handle that. But there's millimeter wave technology by which from the tops of tall buildings, and if you know Cleveland, we have plenty of tall buildings, we can build these redundant fiber rings in the sky. And the first one we built was in the central neighborhood, coming off of St. Vincent's Charity Hospital and then over to the Cedar Tower high rise, up into Cleveland to Bond Tower, over the 2100 2100 Lakeside, the men's shelter. We put a computer lab in there. Then it goes to Wilson. It comes back around down into Outhwaite and one of the tall buildings there, the Legacy facility, and then back around to St. Vincent's. And from that, we have supplied over 500 seniors in apartment units internet for free since about 2017. So we know the technology works. All of those were in what we call MDU facilities, multi-dwelling units. It's required very little maintenance, but our board said free isn't sustainable, right? I mean, it would be wonderful if we could provide everyone in the city of Cleveland with free internet, but that's not sustainable. Go into those neighborhoods, learn about the neighborhoods, and figure out, can you come up with a model that's affordable, reliable internet service? And it's just not good enough for these neighborhoods. This has to be as good as you or I can get or better. And so we've designed this for 50 megabit per second service down and about 20 up. So that's the way that we've looked at it. And then affordable, reliable, but bring us a sustainable business model. And we did that in 2019. We took 2 years. We went into the neighborhoods, we built partnerships, and we said, this has to be a community-based effort. The people who are in the neighborhoods, who know the neighborhoods, the trusted faces in the neighborhoods, have to help us deliver the connectivity, help us raise the dollars, and help us get to the people in the city. Because if you've never had internet, maybe you don't even know that you're missing a digital economy. And we specifically focused the mission of Digital C to be making Greater Cleveland's digital future equitable. And the first thing that you need to make that equitable is access to the internet. And it has to be in your home. It can't be just a Wi-Fi hotspot. That's a temporary fix. It can't be just a mobile device. It's pretty hard if you're a student to do your homework on a mobile device, or if you want to go to college to fill out a FAFSA application, or if you want to do a job application, or if you're a senior in a high-rise and you're socially isolated, and I'm talking pre-COVID now. This is, we didn't jump on board just because of COVID. And in 2019, the board was all in on a plan to connect 42,000 households over a 5-year period. And the board was scratching their heads, and we presented a $36 million infrastructure plan. Now, that's to do the whole city of Cleveland. And think about fiber to the home is about $50,000 to $60,000 a mile, okay? So for the whole city of Cleveland, we believe that around $40 million, we can connect the whole city in 5 years. And they said, let's focus. Let's start in some focused neighborhoods. And we said, we're going to go to the poorest neighborhoods first and the least connected neighborhoods, because this issue tracks poverty. It also tracks redlining that was mentioned at the Cleveland Foundation annual meeting today, because if you look at those maps, these are our poorest communities that have been left behind. And we first built a tech hive basically right in the middle of these neighborhoods on 68th and Euclid. So Huff's to our north, Fairfax is to our south. We've got Glenville Central. We're right in the middle of that. And we said, we're gonna invite the neighbors in. We're gonna meet people. We're gonna do digital literacy training here. But we've got to connect them to the internet. So we just started to get tall buildings. The first one we got was the Juvenile Justice Center. So we started in Fairfax. And we started in September last year to connect households in Fairfax. We got to December, we presented this $36 million plan, and the board approved a budget for the year. And they said, Dorothy, if we build this thing, is anybody going to sign up? And we said, yeah, we think so. So we started out, winter months are kind of hard to climb on icy roofs once we got into December and January and February. But come March, you all know what happened, a pandemic hit. And it was the schools that came to us first. They went to the Cleveland Foundation, first Breakthrough, then CMSD, and they came to us and they said, 5 years to connect these neighborhoods, how fast can you build this? And CMSD said, can you build it fast enough to get to our 16,000 households, 38,000 kids and about 16,000 households? How fast can you build this? And if you can do that, we'll pay for the subscriptions. And so fast forward to the May board meeting, and the board chair says, be careful what you wish for. Everybody wants it, and they want it fast. So we just continued building. We just celebrated today on Friday. We connected our 300th household in Fairfax. We've got 5 neighborhoods active now. We've got Fairfax. Off the backside of Juvenile Justice Center, we can get to Buckeye Woodhill, a little bit to Central. We've got Glenville, we've got Huff, we've got Clark Fulton West 25th Metro. Hospital became a big partner, helping us, giving us the Metro Towers to get over that full greater Clark Fulton area. Scranton Castle is the first CMHA facility that we've done for a fee. Dollar Bank has subsidized everyone in that building. Jeff Patterson went out and bought computers with webcams for everyone in that facility, these 161 units with seniors. And the biggest customer support call that we get from the Scranton Castle folks is, excuse my language, what the heck are we going to do with these computers that somebody gave us with the webcam? Like they told us we can get to our medical appointments, we can get to MyChart, we need training. So all the computers, the devices, the training are important, but you can't get to that part until you get people connectivity in their homes. And that is what we're committed to do. Leon Wilson at the Cleveland Foundation was on the ground a long time before I was, and I was drinking from a fire hose, but without Leon, I never would have gotten up to speed as fast as I did. and certainly without the Cleveland Foundation convening that Digital Equity Coalition to educate everybody about this, because COVID made it real to everyone. But we have got to get connectivity into every household in this city and in this inner ring suburbs. And our commitment is first to the city. East Cleveland will be the first, outside the city suburb that we do. And Sherry Feldman, who chaired our board just prior to retiring from the Cuyahoga County Libraries, we promised her that the next suburb would be Warrensville Heights because some of the lowest reading scores in the city were there. And I will say that with CMSD, we're working hand in hand to get in as fast as possible to replace the hotspots with connectivity to the home. And they've been a terrific partner. We're moving as fast as we can for those students and everyone else. That seems to be the focus. But, every student has to have a family member, right, taking care of them. And many of those folks are the and underemployed, and now with COVID, more unemployed than underemployed. They need computers in the house to access jobs. Everybody needs them for better health care, and that's just our commitment, is to connect as many households as possible. We do need $40 million to do it. The Digital C board has invested over $6 million. We're fortunate in that we have access to the middle mile, the one community middle mile that we built and sold to Everstream. So we've got that access for a while. And tall building owners have been really, they've joined on as partners. And what we can't get from a line of sight from a tall building, we've got technology that will be launching at October 1st under the tree canopy. 60% of Cleveland, it's the forest city, is under a tree canopy, but we'll be able to get to do that. And that will actually be technology that will be much higher speeds even than the point-to-point. So it's pretty exciting.
It's incredibly exciting. I don't know. Some of the stuff I haven't even really thought about before, and I'm excited to see it play out. I want to go to a handful of questions. The first one, unfortunately, we just lost her, but Meryl Johnson, who's the State Board of Education representative for District 11, was asking a couple of questions that I think are important for this. Dale, to you, she was asking, how do parents who don't have internet access now find out about the pods and things of that nature? So how are we getting that information out to the disconnected?
So we are in partnership with CMSD. We should have a list of who's been approved to offer these pods by September 8th or September 9th. And that list will be something that CMSD shares with its principals, the family support specialists, and the Say Yes schools, and some teachers, so that they can actually make recommendations for some kids, because they often know the young people who were not connected in any way, shape, or form with some of the younger students. So that's one way. Two is we have a lot of groups that seem to be, looks like they're going to apply for this, are community partners that have relationships in neighborhoods or with families. Some of those relationships were just maintained. They're getting the word out through their networks. We've talked to several different coalitions of churches. They're getting the word out through their network. And I would say that all of them understand that to get the word out does not mean just to put something up on a website. It means calling and flyers and things like that. So we're trying as much as possible not to just use websites. It is up to individual organizations, once they are approved to do a pod, to register kids. So we're not managing a registration process that's centralized. Parents and kids will go to those individual organizations. We're trying as much as possible to have pods be near schools, because we are not offering transportation. That was too hard to figure out, to be frank, both safety-wise and cost-wise. And so for many of these places, will be places that kids can walk to, or families can drop them off to.
So Dale, Nicole Lednick is asking whether or not the list will be shared with families of high schoolers. And somebody earlier was also sort of related, asking, why was the decision made to stop at 8th grade?
It's just
I know there's no right answers in this world.
It's just a cost issue.
Okay.
It's a cost, and we've never built this before.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the students that were the worst off, in particular in the spring, were our youngest kids, actually. I mean, everybody had issues, let's be clear.
Sure.
But in particular, it's hard for young kids to be supervised when there's no one to supervise them. And so we just made the decision to start right now with K-8. Believe me, we have our own debates within the planning team about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to do a cutoff at some point, so we've done that. And as we go forward and learn more, we're going to be evaluating as we go. If we can find money and room to add on, I think we
could always expand. Sure.
Want to start first with a smaller group.
Yeah, and I think it's important to drive that focus. I think the to me the most interesting, but not in a good way, piece of information that I learned was we had Eric Gordon on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how I believe it was him was talking about how the rates of parents who both work in essential jobs is so much higher for students in CMSD than students in most other districts. So these kids, I was home with my kids. My job isn't essential. I wish it was, but it wasn't. So I was home. My wife was home. Most of my friends were home. But when we're talking about these kids in Cleveland, they have parents who are, working for the city, sanitation, the hospitals, all of these different, verticals that we need and rely on. And those kids need us. All right. Thank you, Dale. Kurt, another question that kept coming up from folks is about these computers. I know you answered some of that in the chat, but not everyone reads the chat. So hoping you can talk just a little bit about a little more detail, number one, about what could be used, what you're specifically looking for. But also, Becky let us know that the Cuyahoga County Library drive is over. I'm not sure if you know of other places, but I know people are eager to find more computers to donate. So we need a place to donate them, if that's a thing right now.
PCs for people will take any computer. They can use the parts. They can always use the parts. The best one, and we talked about this earlier today on a separate panel, the best computers are 7 years old or newer. The best ones are laptops, and they have a webcam so that students can get into their Zoom meetings. So you can make sure you participate in all of those. I think that answers your whole question.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in the chats, I'll bring it up again, that the ideal computers are less than 7 years old and have a forward-facing webcam, but they will take your Commodore 64 maybe, because there are still parts in there maybe that they could use for something else. Thank you, Kurt. Dorothy, another question that I had, and it's something that you and I have talked about a little earlier today and in the past, but I think other people might want to know. We've been talking for a few years about hotspots as kind of a panacea. So what's the big deal? Why can't we just continue to focus on these hotspots where we already have that deployment started? They're cheap and getting cheaper. Why can't we just keep using those?
Well, they are cheap just to distribute, but they use the same bandwidth. All the mobile bandwidth is pretty much the same. And when that space gets crowded, as it will with thousands of hotspots, you're going to get interference, and the infrastructure in the city for mobile as well as fixed wireless is not as robust as it is outside of the city. So I think that will be an issue. And they're expensive because they're good for a quick fix, but there's data plans that go along with them. And I think there has to be a data cap on them. I'm pretty sure they don't give unlimited use of data. Mm-hmm. And part of that is just because if you start downloading massive amounts of data, it starts to, take up that bandwidth. So it's better than nothing, but it can't be the long-term solution. It won't work over the long term at the volumes that think about 50,000 households. That's households, and if you have the average 2.2 people per household, right? That's what the stats show. Trying to use hotspots, the airwaves are just going to be really, really crowded, and the speeds will slow down.
And it's yet another disequity issue, right? I mean, I think about my kids who have a gig, and everyone they know has a gig to their house. And then these kids that we're talking about don't, so they don't have the same opportunities.
Yeah, and so the technology that we're getting, 60% of Cleveland is under the tree canopy. That's been our biggest installation issue, is making sure that we can get line of sight from these tall buildings. We will get under that tree canopy in Huff and Glenville for starters, and it will be with gig service in the city of Cleveland.
So Dorothy, Joseph Maxwell just asked a question that I was thinking as well. He's asking, is there anything we can do from a policy perspective to help advocate for internet as a public utility? What should people want to hear? We have a lot of voices here.
Yes. Terrific question. Internet should be a public utility. It's as important. It's the electricity of the 21st century. No one should be without it. Think about, okay, so the tech hive's at 6815 Euclid Avenue. And think about what was on the north and south side of us all the way up this corridor. I mean, we were auto distributors and dealerships, right? And just think about when we built these wonderful neighborhoods that, were all supported and built with manufacturing, the wealth of the manufacturing center of the world. If we decided that these neighborhoods just didn't need electricity because they were too poor to pay for it. And that's kind of what we've done, right? We didn't build the infrastructure in because it's not just a cost issue, it's an accessibility issue, because the profits weren't there to build that kind of infrastructure into the city as the digital economy was growing. So, we sometimes get pushed back from the carriers, and there are two in Cleveland, AT&T and Charter Spectrum, and we don't believe that we're competing with them. In fact, if they'll come in and help us solve this problem, because we can't scale to 50,000 households right away, but any time that we lay any type of infrastructure in this city, it should have fiber included, so that the fiber starts to get closer and closer to these neighborhoods. Any new neighborhood should have fiber built into it. And that is a public policy issue. To scale this, we're gonna need public funding. And for many years, the state of Ohio thought this was just a rural issue. This is not just a rural issue. This is a rural and an urban issue. And it's not just Cleveland. It's every manufacturing city in Northeast Ohio that doesn't have this infrastructure built into it in its poorest communities. So we have got to become smarter as a community and be advocates for change. And there's no one, in fact, I was shocked to hear that one of our board members was in a room of people, of business leaders recently that didn't even know there was a digital divide, even with COVID. Mm-hmm. So just educating people in public policy and just making this issue known in a way that's not, there's no need to relive the past, to point fingers about why it's this way. It is this way, and we've got to move forward, and we have to fix it. It's all hands on deck.
I think that this is the year, maybe finally, of all of us stopping just not saying anything when we know that there's an equity issue and we hear people saying that there's not an equity issue. 2020, hopefully, is going to be the year of all of us starting to say, whoa, slow down. This is really kind of a major problem.
Dale, can I add on there?
Yeah,
sorry about that. Voices are the most important thing, advocating and making sure everybody understands the loud voices to your legislator, to make them realize. But the current administration will not make this a public utility, whether everybody in the country says it or not. Most important thing you can do, vote, fill out your census. I'll just say that.
I've got my read, think, vote t-shirt on, Kurt.
All right.
So I'm with you. Dale, I think there's been a whole lot of interest in the chat about the pods. So I've got a couple of quick follow-ups for you on that. First of all, how big is the need? How many students and families are you hoping to be able to serve? Are there any estimates and how close are we to having enough pods to serve?
You know, we don't completely know the answer. We're hearing anecdotally that a number of parents, they're already doing it. Some parents are literally pulling their kids out of some of the public school systems and putting them in the Catholics, because the Catholics are opening in person, because they know it's funny, people wanted to do individualized education over the last few years. This is what's happening. Parents are realizing this kid needs in person, that kid can be online. And so we're hearing that there's demand. You know, we'll understand that better in the next couple of weeks. It's a pilot. Everybody should remember, it's a pilot, it's a pilot, it's a pilot. But we're expecting demand to be higher than what we might be able to meet, to be honest. So we're just trying to make those numbers match up on either side. Can I just add that, like the Digital Equity Fund, we are also seeking donations. We are trying to raise $1 million to support 1,000 to 2,000 students, depending on where those students end up being located. We're at least halfway there, but we definitely need some more donations. No donation is too small. All of this is being funneled through the United Way of Greater Cleveland. You can go on their website and donate, please, 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 or tell others to donate. And the other thing we need, if you can't donate money, is we need PPE supplies. We've got some masks coming through CMSD. That's great, through a great donation from Cleveland Clinic, but we need cleaning supplies in particular. So if you have thoughts on how to get access to those, we'll even buy them if we can get them at a cheaper rate. You can go also contact Kara Porter at United Way, or you can go through Lisa Baskin-Naylor at CMSD, or through MyCom. Any of them, we're all working together. If you have thoughts on how to get cleaning supplies in particular, we would be really, really grateful for that.
And we'll put all these asks and those names in that follow-up email that we'll send out. I don't know when those get sent out, a few days later, I think, generally. I have, I think, a really critical question that Becky Ranallo was asking in the chat. Becky, I asked you on mute. I'm not sure if you did. Can you ask your question?
It wasn't a question. It was just a comment for really everybody. Our panelists know this, and Dorothy even alluded to it. Even for our residents in the area who are connected, if they don't know how to use the connection and the equipment that they have, it doesn't matter that they're connected. And so while we may solve the connectivity piece, hopefully in the near future here, that focus, everyone also needs to remember and talk to their own elected officials about the fact that, you know, even if Westlake's well connected, we still need to be offering training there and supporting training in those locations.
And the libraries are critical to this, and the county libraries are critical to it. Your ballot initiative is critical. The Cleveland Public Libraries are important, because we can't do, the libraries are pods, and you have the bandwidth, you've got the ability to do it. You've opened up, and I'm sure you're some of the safest places. So we need to support anyone who can gather people safely to deliver internet service. So yeah, I agree with that, because the training is so critical, and we can do that online, but you know, it's a chicken and an egg thing, right? You can't deliver online until you get people connected. So we just all have to keep working on it, all aspects of that digital divide, which includes the connectivity, it includes the devices, and then it also includes meaningful use and showing people how to use it in the way, meet them where they are in entering this digital economy, and figure out how to help them just get into it full board, because you're not in the 21st century if you're not part of the digital economy.
And Dorothy, I know that that's been an initiative of Digital C in the past, getting people spun up on how to use this stuff. Is that still an initiative? And if it is that something that you need volunteers for?
Well, our customer support team, after we connect someone, makes a call to find out. We know the neighborhoods, we know all the places that are supplying the training, the libraries, the community development centers. There's many places. We are no longer doing the training ourselves. So we've actually teamed up. So this Thursday over in the Clark Fulton neighborhood from 4 to 7, we're doing a big caravana with cars and public broadcasting system and music, and we're going door to door to connect people. And we have every partner available, the Spanish American Committee, the Hispanic Roundtable, Esperanza, the CDC. They all have the ability to train people. They know where they can find the wraparound services, CEOGC provide. So what we're trying to do is just not walk in the door and connect you and walk out the door and say, see you later, but connect them to the right resources. And so that's we can't do it all ourselves. As Leon told me, pick your lane, Dorothy. So
Sure, yeah.
we picked our lane.
That makes sense, but I do think that it is still an opportunity for those of you looking for a way to volunteer, that there are still people. And one of the things I'd like to caution people, one of my big pet peeves is this phrase that I hate so much that we use all the time in schools, digital natives. And I say that because sometimes it makes us think that just because someone is below a certain age, they're set because they're a digital native. But if there's a big difference between being able to consume content and being able to create content, to work, to learn in a digital way. And a lot of young people don't have those skills. So it's not just older people who need that support. We are just about out of time. So I'm hoping that Kurt, Dorothy, Dale, you can each give us a real quick 30-second ask. What's your ask? What can people here do to support? Kurt, you want to lead us off?
Sure, and I should have said this before, but echoing something that Dale said earlier, and something that has been said, one way we're getting the word out about this is through all of the different coalitions, all of the different networks, and through the entire community. This is a community-wide effort. If you know of anybody who doesn't have access, put them in contact with us, put them in contact with whoever it might be, their principal, PCs for People, Digital C. We need to get the word out. Everybody has their own network. Use that network and let them know.
Perfect. Thank you, Kurt. Dorothy?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. You know, go to the Digital C or Empower CLE websites, get the phone number, call in, fill out the forms. We're expanding daily, so we can tell you right away, you know, whether you're in a coverage area or not. We do need to raise $40 million, so that's coming. But I think the thing is that just try to appreciate people who don't have the same access to the internet that you and your family do. And I'm going to tell you one quick story. I don't want to, but I grew up at 93rd and Miles. Miles Park was my library branch. And I Felton Thomas at the 150th anniversary of the libraries, that without the library, I never would have been able to read, nor would I have gone to college, because I was the first kid in my house that went to college. My dad worked in a foundry on 40th and Payne, and he had an 8th grade education, and he was what we would call today a chief operating officer. I went with him on my graduation year to work because he was going to teach me about bookkeeping before I went to college. That was 1966. My first day to work, I drove with my father up 55th Street, and it was armed with National Guardsmen and tanks. I'll never forget that. And as I crossed 55th every day from downtown to this tech hive, that's the same problem we're dealing with now. We've got to overcome this problem in this city. It's about social justice, it's about racial justice, it's about inequities. So jump in and help now.
Absolutely, Dorothy. Thank you. And Dale, from you, any final asks?
I couldn't have said it any better.
You have to follow that story. Sorry.
I couldn't have said it any better. All of these efforts are about social justice, period. And so if I would just ask people to, part of this is not just educating ourselves, because I think those on this call, we know a lot, but it's helping educate the people that are in your social circle.
Right.
Because I'm amazed at people who are educated, but don't come in contact with people who are different from themselves. Mm-hmm. And they really don't understand the needs. At a minimum, you need to know you need to understand the need and then figure out how to help.
Yes.
So use your social networks, talk about these issues with your friends, with your colleagues, so that Dorothy's board member does not go into a room and someone says, what digital divide? That makes no sense at a minimum, let alone solving the issue.
Absolutely. Dale, thank you so much. On behalf of the NeoSTEM ecosystem staff, I want to express our deepest gratitude to today's panelists and to all of you for the work that you've done and what you're continuing to do to make learning, to make these equity issues better for all of our children and all of our families. We'll be sending a link to today's recording as well as a written summary to all of you. As always, please feel free to share this as widely as you'd like. We'd appreciate it. It will also be posted on neostem.org. Next month's NeoSTEM ecosystem meeting is scheduled for October 6th at 4 p.m. A registration link for that meeting is or will be soon posted on the NeoSTEM website under meetings. Again, that's www.neostem.org. Thank you, Kurt, Dale, Dorothy. My name is Jeremy Shore, and I hope to see you all on October 6th.